are going to talk a little bit about phonemic awareness today. This is the first, I think, PD that UCA is doing. This is a little bit about me. I've actually been at UCA for 30 years. I had an Angela back in the day, so I didn't teach her all this the first time because I didn't know all this. Things have changed a little bit and we've learned a lot, but this is me, been at UCA a long time, UCA Bear for many years. This is my newest grandbaby, Wyatt. He's 8 months old, and so we are enjoying our Wyatt time. These are my other two grandsons, Waylon and Weston. And those of you that know me know I love the beach, love my family, but I also love just talking about how to help kids that struggle. I find that I have a heart for helping struggling readers. I've actually been through the connections training. I'm working on letters training right now, which is another really good training. So kind of like someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Cornelia that talked about, hey, I just need to update. And so that's one of the things, even though I've been in this business for 35 years, I taught second grade before I went to UCA. I've constantly feel like I have to learn and update because that's what we do for the kids that we care so much about. These are UCA's programs. Of course, all of our graduate programs now are online. We have a lot of different programs. We've actually brought Gifted and Talented back this past year. I'm very excited about that. Actually have a EDD, a doctoral program now in leadership that you can actually get your doctorate at UCA. So these are the online programs, and I just wanted to give a shout out. Lots of great faculty at UCA, lots of expertise. So if you decide you want to get a master's degree or further your education, don't go any farther than UCA because it's a great place to go. I also wanted to give a shout out to RISE. Those of you that have been through the Reading Initiative for Student Excellence, I give you the web page, the website here that you can go on and look at that. But you know, they're really it's really they're trying to help all K-12 educators be able to create a culture of reading in our state, because we do have some statistics that we're not proud of when it comes to reading. But then we've also one of the first states that got a dyslexia law in the book so that we can actually take care of screenings now for all kindergarten first grade students, identify dyslexia, and then help them so that those of you that are teaching, several of you said you're teaching fourth grade and sixth grade and 12th grade. The way it is now, you've got a lot of kids that have never been screened for dyslexia. I have college students that have dyslexia and they don't realize they have it until we start talking about it in class. Hopefully, because our state has initiated this law, in 5-6 years, you will have less and less. You will have less struggling readers than what you have now. So that's great news. Kudos to the state. One of the things about Zooming is if you have a dog, sometimes he just comes into the office and makes himself at home in here, and then he never closes the door when he leaves. So I have to get up and close the door to my office. This is the ladder of reading. This is why we advocate for a structured literacy approach. You've got 35% of your students that are pretty much going to learn to read. I mean, if you expose them to books and give them the basics, and for many years, the way that we taught reading, the way I taught reading was a literature-based approach. I taught phonics in the context of good quality literature, poems, songs, music, used the guided reading approach, looked a lot at context. I did teach phonics, but it was with file folder games. It was with, it wasn't a very systematic, isolated approach. It was an approach that went along with books that we were reading, and it was fairly successful, but it didn't reach those 10 to 15% that had dyslexia. You have to do something different for them. 40 to 50% learn to read with this code-based, explicit, systematic, and sequential instruction. We know children that are struggling, probably 1 in 5 children have dyslexia. which means that they have to learn to read in a different way. And that's why they're struggling. And I think where we've really failed them in education is what we do is we even if we hold them back a year or we put them in special education, we don't change the way we teach them. So we're like, oh, well, we'll just give you another year of the same kind of instruction that didn't work. So do any of you see that in the kids that you're seeing? That I want you to think of somebody that you're really, really struggling. It's like they've got to have a different way. Okay. When we look at reading failure, we're looking at 4 basic things. Research tells us that there are neurobiological factors. We know now because of functional MRIs that children who have dyslexia, parts of their brain light up differently when they're reading than children who do not have dyslexia. So we know that this is brain based, and it is a problem. So they have to learn to light up that part of the brain that's just not quite working the way it should. So this is we know that a lot of children that have dyslexia and have issues with reading, it is genetic. They usually will have a parent that also has issues. But then we also know that there are children that it may not be their brain, it may be the environment. And so we're looking at familial factors where things in their environment, maybe they're not read to, maybe they're not given a value of education. Maybe they're just, I don't know, just not in a kind of environment where reading is valued and where they have an opportunity to explore letters and explore learning. We know that there are socioeconomic factors. There's no doubt that children in poverty struggle when learning to read. There are a lot of reasons for this. There's a lot of professional developments you can go to for this. This is one of the hardest ones for us as teachers to address because it's hard to fix this, isn't it? When you only have them 7 hours a day. And then there are instructional factors, and that's where we come in. We need to know about these other 3 areas, but we also need to know that the teacher is the number one indicator of whether or not once that child hits school, they'll learn to read or not. And it's not one approach. I'm sorry. It's a lot of approaches for a lot of different kids, and being able to adjust and adapt to what your students need. So the research on the science of reading now basically shows 5 categories of reading, or 5 components of learning to read. Okay, so they are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So I want to take just a moment with these 4, and I want you to tell me which one do you feel like you know the most about and the least about. Abby, what do you think?
Just finishing my master's, I pretty well know a lot of them, and I did my undergrad at UCA and they prepared me for those as well. But I think my strongest is phonemic awareness and phonics, and probably vocabulary is my least.
Okay, vocabulary. Okay, very interesting. Well, and you're teaching what grade? 6th grade. Yeah.
And I
Katie?
use Wilson. We use the Wilson system. So
yeah. Katie, what do you think?
I would have to agree that phonemic awareness and phonics are probably, I could use more, but they're probably my strongest. And then I would say fluency and then comprehension are probably the ones that I need more, especially noticing in kindergarten how I was like, how am I supposed to help them with this? But
okay,
that's probably would be my 2 that are my weakest.
Okay, very good. What about you, Heather?
I would think that the vocabulary would be my weakest spot. The phonics and the fluency, I think, are my strongest suits.
Okay. Angela, what do you think?
I am going to flip flop. I think that fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension are my strengths, and then the phonemic awareness and phonics are my areas of need, just because probably of my age and how I was taught.
Very good. Very good. You're making points of my presentation for me.
Oh, good.
Cornelia, what do you think?
I was sitting here thinking, and so I would have to agree with the previous reflections based on how I was taught and the way and I've delivered instruction. I would have to say fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. Those are areas where I feel the most comfortable. And then phonemic awareness and phonics are the areas that I feel like I need to strengthen in more.
Okay, good, good, very good. What about you, Cameron?
I'm pretty much just like what the young lady just said. Comprehension, for my kids is a challenge sometimes, and of course vocabulary. They kind of all come together, but the phonics and fluency, pretty good. The vocabulary and comprehension probably be the two areas that I'd need to strengthen or to learn, more about.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was going to make this point, but I thought I might turn it over to you and see if you guys would make it for me. But have you heard, you guys have all been in education long enough that you've heard that education is like a pendulum sometimes, and things we swing one that way, and then we got a brand new thing, and you got to go through another week of PD, and you go through that week of PD, and you're like, oh, well, that's just Tessa's the same thing as PET. It's just called a different name, or it's something else. Rise. Oh, well, that's this. It's called a different name. And I think in reading, and these are just my thoughts here, being in education for 35 years, I think that older people like me were taught to really look at fluency and comprehension and motivation, to teach children to love to read and to want to read. And we did phonics, but phonics was like a small piece of getting them fluent. I remember when I was being in school, how it was really, really drilled into me that Hooked on Phonics was a very bad program. I mean, I just remember we were told that was a horrible program because Hooked on Phonics taught students to sound out words and say words, and then they would read robotically, and there was no fluency or comprehension. Okay. So that's kind of the background. And some of you nodding your heads, that's where we came from. Okay. So now what the science of reading is done, and I think I believe in the science of reading, but what we're doing now is we're looking at a more systematic way to teach them to sound out words. You can't just look at the other words in the sentence. You just can't look at the pictures. You can't just, you can't figure it out. You've got to have a code-based system to figure these words out. And so for me, comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency, I know those strategies because I was taught those for 35 years. But phonics, I know pretty well because I was taught that too. We used basal reading approaches when I taught. We used literature-based instruction. I know phonics pretty well. Phonemic awareness about 10 years ago was like, well, that's fun. I honestly thought phonemic awareness and phonics was the same thing. It's like being aware of sounds. And so what this training in connections and David Kilpatrick's trainings and all the trainings that I've gone through the last 10 years in dyslexia, it has taught me a lot about this approach that's more systematic, code-based. I believe it also works better if it's multi-sensory, so that there's some hands-on as you're teaching the sounds. So phonemic awareness is being able to hear the sounds and know the difference between sounds and what those sounds are, substituting sounds, deleting sounds, and all of that was new to me. So the reason that I'm presenting this now is because if this was new to me, this is probably new to some other folks. Now, I get those of you that are recent graduates, it's not as new because this is what we're teaching now in all of our classes. My fear is that even though I believe that we should be teaching phonemic awareness and phonics in a systematic, code-based instructional way, I also believe we have to be careful that we still talk about vocabulary and we still talk about comprehension and we still look to fluency to build comprehension. You've got to have all 5 of these or you're going to have gaps in their learning. So even though today we're going to focus on phonemic awareness because I feel like that's something that has kind of been overlooked, we're going to know that all 5 of these are very important. Okay. The theoretical models of reading, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but I am going to show you these so that when you see them in your school and your PDs, you're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Some of you could probably write an article about these, but the simple view of reading is, again, taking your word recognition and your language comprehension and putting it together for reading comprehension, showing that it takes both. Okay. But to do word recognition, you've got to have the phonemic awareness and the phonics. You've got to identify letters and sounds and know what those sounds are and be able to blend them together. The reading rope is also, the Scarborough rope is something that we're really emphasizing now in all of our reading programs. And this is language comprehension and word recognition and breaking it up into background knowledge. You know, Cornelia knows we talked about background knowledge and we've always talked about that. Vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. But that's not the whole piece of the pie, because if you're doing a guided reading approach, that may be the only things that we're talking about. We also have to pair that up with phonological awareness, decoding, and even sight recognition, because some words, if you sound them out, they're not right. And we know that in the English, that's why the English language is so difficult. You know, we have 44 sounds and how many letters? 26. So we don't have, we've got so many exceptions to the rules that's very confusing for children. We also have this word reading development here where we look at letter knowledge, phoneme awareness, and moving to reading fluently by sound, syllable, morpheme, whole word, families, and analogies. So this is basically 4 phases that we talk about with Erie's phases of word reading development when they're at the pre-alphabetic stage, early alphabetic stage, later alphabetic stage, and then consolidated. And so this is very early on. And if you're not teaching very young children, you may not see this as much, but you may note this with your struggling readers, the way they're sounding out words and reading. So what we're going to do now is, I think I skipped one. Okay, there's a slide missing, but that's okay. I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at phonemic awareness and the different activities, because I wanted today to be activity. You can clap your hands because I'm finished with the theory and we're gonna move on to activities. So these are activities and I'm gonna go through some rhyme, some resources and activities to teach rhyme, because when we're teaching phonemic awareness, we teach rhyme, we teach blending, we teach isolation, segmenting, and deleting and adding sounds, okay? So we're gonna just go through some activities here that I'm going to share with you, and I'm gonna share the voice, and so the way we're gonna do this, because we're gonna share and then we're gonna come back and talk about these things, but I'm not gonna show you the whole videos. You will have the videos so that you can go back and watch them later, but we're not gonna watch every video because we don't have time today. The first thing I wanna show you, and I wanna introduce you if you don't know about Reading Rockets, they have some great games for lots of different activities. So the first thing is with phonemic awareness, we want it to be fun. It doesn't have to be just so boring that, I mean, there are ways to make it still fun. If you're dealing with struggling readers and you're dealing with kindergarten and first graders, it can't be so boring that they just check out on you. So we're trying to make it fun. So these are some rhyming games from Reading Rockets that you can do before, during, and after your reading. And I wanted to show you how one of the things I think we found that works best is just simple little index cards with words written on them, and how that helps children recognize rhymes, explore rhymes, and cheap and inexpensive too. So I want to show you just a little bit of this video, and I'm going to share my sound and try to start this for you.
We're doing rhyming words, and I want everybody to tell me what rhyming words are. Same sound at the end. When words have the same sound at the end, that means that they rhyme. So we're gonna find the words that rhyme with this picture here. We have a picture of hat. Hat. And we have the word hat here. How do we spell hat, Leslie? H-A-T. H-A-T. And the last sound is underlined, A-T. Hat. So we're looking for other words that have at the end. Now let's look at what we have here. What's this? Bat. Rat. This is a rat.
That's a bat. A bat.
Bat. A bat. And what is this?
A house.
Where? What house? School. School. Okay, so let's say them again. We have whale.
Whale.
Rat.
Rat.
Cat.
Cat.
Bat.
Bat.
School.
School.
So we need to find things that rhyme with hat. What is that?
Rat.
Rat. Hat. Do they rhyme?
Yes.
They have the same sound at the end?
Yes.
Let's say it together. Rat.
Rat.
Hat.
Hat.
Okay, I'm going to put the word rat. See it here? R-A-T. We have rat. Okay. Okay, what did Emily pick?
Bat.
Bat. Let's see if they rhyme. Bat. Hat. Do they have the same sound at the end?
Yes.
Yes. B-A-T, bat. Now let's say them together. Ready? Hat.
Hat.
Cat.
Cat.
Rat.
Rat.
Bat. All these words are what kind of words?
Same sound at the end.
And what are those words called?
Rhyming words.
Rhyming words.
Okay, so let me ask you a second. What were some good practices that you saw with her, with what she just showed us in that video? What were some strategies that she used that work really well with young children?
Using the actual objects.
I wanted you to make sure you saw that, using the actual holding up. It's still hands-on, it's still multisensory. And we don't know why, but we just know that when children touch something and manipulate it, touching it, it makes it go to their brain. It stays with them longer. So that, very good. So hands-on, they touched it. What else?
I thought the visual, the cards were helpful.
The visuals, they had visuals with the cards. They heard all three: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Very good, Cornelia. They sure did. And what about repetition? Every time she went back through the same ones. Now, Cameron, you may be sitting back going, "It ain't gonna work with my kids." The biggest challenge that we have with older students is they feel like this is kind of baby stuff. And when we've tried to do this with older students, and they may have the same skill deficits, but they're older and it's harder with them. So one of the things, and we'll get to that later, that we've turned to is using tiles with older students, like the Barton approach, and also using iPad apps and using the computer to do these same things. But for some reason, when you're doing it on a computer or an app, it seems older. I can do that, you know. And then the other thing is just using, and we'll watch just a little bit of this one.
Today, we're gonna learn about rhyming words. A rhyming word are words that sound the same. For example, duck and buck.
Buck.
Buck. And dog and frog. Yes. Today's activity looks like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to place the card in the center. of your group, and we will be matching. We are going to be rhyming what you have in your hand to the mat that is on the floor in the center of your group. What is this a picture of? Phone. What is this a picture of? Boat. And this one is a seashell. A sea, like the beach. Kenji, can you tell me?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that one, but I just wanted you to see a little bit of how examples that you'll have these if you want to go back later, but they're just little clips of ways that we can teach rhyming words with games and fun and interactive activities. One of the other things Reading Rockets does on this page is it gives you cutouts that you can do rhyme books, body part games, space themed rhymes, family word charts that you can do in your classroom. And it also gives you some ideas for differentiating instruction for your second language learners. So I really liked that site, and I thought that was a really good one. And then the other one that I thought, I try to give you a couple on each one for rhyming, is I gave you a site that just shows you how to make some games. This is actually 35 pages here, which I thought was a pretty good resource. There's a beanbag rhyme game that actually gets them up kinesthetically moving and playing the game. And then there's even the sheets that you can use. I don't like worksheets with younger children, but these are used more as games that they can be colored, laminated, and used over and over as games. So I thought that was another good resource. Someone that's with us now, does anyone want to share something? Oh, I also wanted to put a plug in for the nursery rhymes, because those of you that teach the younger grades, nursery rhymes naturally teaches rhyme activities. And so you can play with them a lot in your instruction. And there's some videos we're going to look at in a little bit too. Does anyone have any other rhyming activities that work really well in your classroom? Well, we're going to go on then to blending, which is another part of phonemic awareness. And one of the things, I think, if you've heard of the Wilson Foundations, it's a very intensive training for you. If you got Wilson trained, there's not very many people in Arkansas that are Wilson trained, but they have a great program that works really well, that's been successful with children. I also have an example of a phonics first blending activity. And then probably the one that we've used the most at UCA with children is we've done Bears Read for several summers, where we tutored struggling readers, and we used Barton. We were trained on Barton, and Barton uses tiles, and that's the manipulative that the kids move. They start out with tiles that don't have letters on them, because remember, phonemic awareness is hearing the sound, it doesn't have anything to do with what the letter looks like. That's getting into phonics. First, they have to just be able to hear and distinguish the sounds. So let me show you some ways here that that we can do this. You can hear that, you can see.
This is the checkers game where grandson and granddad will bond.
I'm going to do some demonstrations with tapping out words for foundations. First, we're going to start with digraph. Okay, a digraph has two letters but only one sound, so it gets one tap. Ch, I, p, chip. Okay. We also have three-letter glued sounds. Okay, when we tap those out, we use our three fingers and we glue them together. So you would tap this out, l, ung, lung. For our syllable types, we'll first start with cat, which is a closed syllable, or short vowel sound. Each letter gets its own tap. K, at, cat. Vowel consonant E syllable type. Okay. Since the E is silent, it does not get a tap, so this is just tapped with three fingers. J, o, k, joke. The open syllable, each letter gets its own tap. M, e, me. Okay. For the vowel team syllables, vowel team only gets one tap also. So this is b-ate, bait. For the R-controlled syllable, again, it only gets one tap, b-er-d, bird. If you have a word with a suffix, any of the suffixes, they do not get tapped out. Ed, er, est, they don't get a tap out. All you do is tap out the base word and then you read it with the suffix. So again, it would be b-er-d, bird, bird, birds. Okay. You do not tap out trick words because they don't follow the English language. And for multisyllabic words, you do not have to tap out each syllable. Let me get. You only need to tap out the syllable that's causing the trouble. So if you need to scoop and read admit, but maybe the second syllable is causing the trouble, they just tap out mit. It, mit, admit. Okay. One more syllable type is the consonant LE syllable. And since the E is silent, you do not tap that sound out either. This is bugle. And if this is the problem, that's the syllable that's causing the problem, you would do g-ble. Put it together. Bugle. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ms. Caps here with Mrs. Jimenez,
Hello.
and we are going to.
So let me ask you, how many of you have used tapping out the sounds? Is that new to anyone, or is someone using that?
I'm trained in Wilson.
One of the things, it's a great program, but a lot of these programs have similarities. Like I think Angela said you were trained in connections. So connections calls them trick words, no, jailbird words. And then Wilson calls them trick words, but they're basically words that don't follow the rules. Okay. So they're called different in different trainings, but the tapping out has been very successful. With Barton, we use the tiles. Let me show you an example of that. It's the same kind of concept. It's just kind of, now the tiles for Barton, this has been very successful with older children because they can do it on the iPad. You can have the real tiles that they're moving around, the concrete tiles, or they can just do it with the iPad. And the older students really like the iPad.
This is Susan Barton, and I am so excited to be able to show you the Barton Tiles app. It has taken us over 2 years to develop this app, and it will completely replace the need for the wooden letter tiles that come with the Barton Reading and Spelling System. But it is so much more than just tiles on an iPad. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to start the Barton Tiles app. And the first thing you'll notice is we have a complete student tracking system built right into the app. So if you are a professional tutor, as I am, you can have a whole list of students with people set up ahead of time. As you touch each student's name, their information on the right-hand side of the screen changes, not only their picture and their location and their phone number and their emails, but I can see exactly what lesson they're on. So Thomas is on level 3, lesson 11, but Holly Baker, a new student, is only in level 1, lesson 3, whereas Carolyn Jones is in level 3, lesson 5, and so on down the list. And as soon as I choose somebody, I can start their lesson. So for example, Gail Penner is coming in for her lesson. So I'm choosing her off the list. We're going to proceed to level 4, lesson 9. So I'm going to tap on that button. And here are all the tiles I need to teach her that lesson. At this point, she has these letters, those digraph tiles, and I'm going to touch on this red button up here because she also has those red units. I'll touch on it again to make it disappear. And you can see at the top of the screen, she's ready for.
So I'm going to stop that one, but Barton does, all of these require money. You know, I mean, like you have to pay for them, but a lot of times a school will pay for a license and that'll help so many people at that school. But what I wanted you to see is some of the different programs that are working, but I'm not promoting any program. I'm promoting a way of doing things. If you'll notice, they all have things in common about the way in which they teach phonemic awareness. Okay. And the last one for blending, just blend. And again, we're just blending sounds together.
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy editing software.
Whether it's
all right,
files
so
or
now
fingers.
we're going to do our blending drill, and that's where we put the two together, okay? So we kind of just let these cards go as they fall. Sometimes you have to be quick on your feet.
Truck.
You know what? Often OLK does.
This is something you could do for free. You don't have to pay for this.
Good.
Baft. Vosel.
Good. Why?
Because it's the ZOE is a consonant LE.
Yeah, it's its own syllable. So what kind of syllable type is this?
Vo.
Yeah. Well, what is it, open or closed?
It's open.
It is open, so that would be a long. What would we have to add here to make it say vazel?
Another Z.
Nice job. All right, let's do this one.
Stozel.
Very good.
Sturzel. Stursp.
Ooh, that would be hard with two R's. You don't normally see that. I'm gonna do this one.
Skrank.
Good, let's add a prefix. This makes up nonsense words.
Conscrank.
Good, let's try it with a suffix at the end. Whoops, right here.
Scrankful.
That's a silly word. We do this because it helps us practice words that are unfamiliar, which happens a lot when we read words when we get older, right? All right, so let me move these. How about this?
Clank.
Good.
Cleeble.
Good.
Cleeked. Cheeked. Chirked.
Whoops, and why can't we have the double S here?
Because a double S only comes after a short syllable.
Short vowel and one syllable word, so that can't be there. How about this then?
Churg. Jerg. John. Hong.
Okay, so that's all on blending, but I wanted to just emphasize here, do you see how the rules have been systematically taught? He knew two S's only come after a short vowel sound, that didn't work, and he was doing nonsense words. But I think this shows us that if we teach students the rules and the way language typically works, they can figure out any word. And that's why she's using the nonsense words in the examples to blend it together. Because if you can't blend the sounds together, then you can't, obviously, you're not going to be fluent or have comprehension. Does anyone have any blending activities that you use that you like, that you'd like to share, or any questions about these blending activities? There's so many, but I just tried to pick a few that I felt was the most creative.
In connections, we use the drill deck, but we also put the three-dimensional object up above it just as a added multisensory piece to it.
I love that. And I love that connections also, because I have the index cards, probably 6,000 index cards. They use the index cards with the words, and they always make the vowels. If you notice in Barton, the vowels are yellow. If you have the index cards and connections, the vowels are in red. So it's every program has a way to really make the vowels sound out, the vowel sounds. And even in connections, they use index cards and they use that puffy glue. And so they'll have like the word cat written, and it's got the puffy so that they can trace the glue, the puffy glue that's dried, so they actually can feel what the letters look like. So when we get to the letters, right now we're just talking about hearing the sounds. Okay, the next we'll do one more, and then we'll take our 5-minute break. So the next one is isolating sounds. So for kids to be able to blend and hear sounds correctly, they've got to be able to break them up. So this is being able to isolate one sound, and that's hard for some children. Okay, so they have to hear one sound before they can blend it with another sound and add and delete. Let me show you kind of an example of this.
Grammarly can help you write quickly and confidently,
I should
so
pay
you
not
never
to
have
get
to slow down
commercials,
at work.
UCA should pay.
I'm going to show you some cards, and I'm going to either ask you to tell me the beginning sound or the ending sound. First thing, this is a well.
You guys hear this?
Letter, you're just going to tell me the sound. What sound do you hear at the end of well? Ooh, very good. This is a dog. What sound do you hear at the beginning of dog? D. Remember, when we say our letters, we cut it off. D. Next picture is a bell. What is the ending sound in bell? Oh, very good. What is the beginning sound in leg? Ooh. Go ahead and tell me what the ending sound in leg is. Good. Let's sound that word out. Ooh, egg. Three sounds. Very good.
Mrs. Henderson uses picture cards from her phonics program to practice phonological awareness at the beginning of her small group lesson. Students should begin identifying initial sounds in the word before moving on to final sounds. This group of students has demonstrated proficiency, and therefore we're working on both.
Which do you think is the hardest for kids? The first sound, last sound, or the middle?
The middle.
Yeah. So we start with what's easiest with them and then move to the harder. Okay, we are going to take a 5-minute, don't go too far, a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back after that. If you don't care, leave your stuff on. Don't get off and get back on because you'll have a waiting room. So just leave everything as is, and we'll take 5 minutes. Because I want to see, is there anything that you've learned so far, or something that kind of stands out as that's just an impression for the last hour? If you haven't learned anything, maybe there's something you could share with us that would add to this. Are you getting training in most of these ideas or some of these ideas? Well, what we're going to do now, I have 23 slides, and we're through 15. So, but what we're going to do with we're going to finish up the phonemic awareness examples, and then I've got some other videos, resources, and other things that we can talk about that'll help with this. Any questions before I go back to share? Okay, let's go back to this. And the next part of breaking phonemic, did you know, one of the things I think we don't realize is just how complicated phonemic awareness can be. So we're breaking these sounds. It's not just about sound. Hey, do you know that sound? Can you compare that sound to another word? So the next one is being able to segment sounds. So being able to divide them out and to segment them. So let's look at a few examples of this, because I think examples work better than me talking.
That face that is usually covered by her phone has...
Hi everybody, this is Julie from Make, Take, and Teach, and welcome to my very first video in what I hope to be a series of videos on topics relating to literacy. This session's focus is on teaching phoneme segmentation, But before I show you some of the activities that you can use to teach this skill, I want to establish a little bit of background knowledge so that you know exactly what phoneme segmentation is and how it fits
Look how
into the
she has
overall
different
picture of literacy
objects and the
instruction.
beads that she's also.
Now, the National Reading Panel
I'm going to
identified
skip
5
over
key
because we've had
components.
this, but I wanted you to see some of her ideas about how she does this. Hang on just a second. Here we go. Here's the examples.
The first activity I like to use when introducing this skill is the breaking up words activity. And I like this activity because there's a direct correspondence between the number of dots on the page and the number of sounds in the word. So if I was introducing this activity to a student, I would say, today we're going to be saying sounds in words. For each sound, I'd like you to point to a dot and then blend the word back as you move your finger across the green arrow. Watch. Duck. D, a, k. Duck. And of course, I'm touching the dots and then blending the word back as I move my finger across the green arrow. Now, of course, I'd provide several more models. And then following the I do, we do, you do model, then I would use a couple cards with the student as we are doing it together. Now, if you download the Breaking Up Words from Make, Take, and Teach, you're going to receive cards with 2, 3, 4, and 5 phonemes. When you are introducing this activity, probably use the 2 and 3 phoneme words, and then you can move up in complexity as the student becomes a little more proficient with this skill. Now, the next activity that I like to use is the squaring up activity. This activity is a little more difficult because there is not a direct one-to-one correspondence always between the picture and the number of squares and manipulatives that you are moving. I know in this picture there is 4 squares, 4 plastic tiles, and tiger happens to have 4 sounds, but on other cards that certainly is not the case. So within this activity, you're going to have the student say the name of the picture, and then for each sound, move a tile. So in this example, the student would say tiger, t, move a tile, I, move a tile, g, move a tile, move a tile. Now, instead of using plastic tiles, you could use bingo chips, pennies, lots of different manipulatives. During the holiday season, often the dollar store has little plastic seasonal gems, for example, like hearts for Valentine's Day or clovers for St. Patrick's Day, and those are kind of fun to use. The Say It, Move It activity is another fun activity for teaching phoneme segmentation. And in this activity, you're going to put your bingo chips in the top box. You'll say a word, and the student will segment the word as they are moving the chip into the dot below. So, for example, if I provided the word cat, the student would say cat, k, move a chip, a, move a chip, move a chip, and then swipe their finger along the green line as they blend the sounds back together into the word. The bead slide is my all-time favorite tool for teaching phoneme segmentation. And to make your bead slide, what you'll need is a shoelace, and then you'll also need beads. I use wooden beads, and you can use plastic beads, of course, but what you're going to want to make sure is that there's some resistance from the bead on this shoelace. And so in this activity, you provide the student with a word like truck, and they move a bead for each sound in the word. So if I said truck, they would say truck, t, move a bead, move a bead, move a bead, k, move a bead. This task is a little more difficult than the activities that I just shared with you, yet a little easier than just providing the word and having them segment without any manipulatives. Well, the activities that I shared with you today are 4 activities, 15. that are contained in the Make, Take, and Teach Phonemic Awareness Activity Pack. And you can download this pack from the Make, Take, and Teach website or from my Teacher Pay Teacher store.
So the thing I like about the Make, Take, Teach is that they give you hands-on, it's not worksheets, it's hands-on activities that you can print and then you can make things. And I love the sliding the beads along. I liked the first one for young children because it's self-checking. But I think you'll find, even those of you that are working with sixth graders and older, one of the hardest things for students who have failed at reading is to think of a phoneme as a sound and not a letter. So when she put up duck, they think, well, it's got 4 phonemes, but it doesn't. It's got 3. And that's hard for especially those that are older that have failed at reading, because they think of everything by letters and not really sounds. So you've got to kind of reteach that and teach it a different way. Here's another.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
Segmenting words is a pre-reading skill where children hear each sound in a given word. Often we can practice this by giving our child a word and having them tell us each sound in that word. Let's practice with the word hat. We're going to say the word and then move the dots into the box for each sound. The word is hat. Let's do the sounds. A, t, hat. Now let's try the word dog. D, a, g. You can practice this with or without pictures by simply giving your child a word and having them stretch it out to hear each sound in that word. You can even try it with nonsense or made-up words.
Okay, and one of the things to remember, this is a lot of times we use magnetic letters later on to do this too, and stretching out the words as we segment them. But right now we're focusing on sounds, not letters, and that's why we're not using those. One more short one.
Ow. House.
Good. What sound is the red bead?
Ow.
Nice job. What sound is the yellow bead? What if I change that to what would it be?
We're getting a little substitution here.
Good job. And what's that word?
House.
With the in front of it, what would it be? Try again.
Mouse.
Nice job.
So the beads are cheap. You can pick them up anywhere, but you can see what you're trying to get students to do is to associate a movement, a hands-on movement as they say the sound. So they're seeing, hearing, moving, actively involved with segmenting out these sounds. And then you move into starting to delete and add sounds, which is what she did with the house and mouse example just now. Even though he was segmenting the sounds with the beads, then she said, what happens when you take the sound and replace it with and that's a very important skill and very hard for those that are struggling with reading. So let me give you an example of this. We're not going to watch all of this. We're going to watch a little bit. It's really good. It's a great way. Oh, hang on. So remember before I told you that we're trying to make this creative. So I don't want us to say, oh, well, it has to be so systematic and isolated that you can't involve a book. So this is a good example of how she's teaching sounds and adding and deleting sounds, but also she's got a book that it's pretty cool. So this is sound deletion.
So this is a great book, isn't it? Shall we show it to the camera? Did you take the B from my book?
They took the book.
Oh, the book. All right, you ready? So you have seen it before, but only a couple of times. Shall we?
Oops, sorry.
Shall we read it again? Hello. Do you have favourite things? I have favourite things. There are bats and beaches, bread, bushes and bulldozers. Shall we say those words? Bats. Can you say it?
Bats.
And beaches.
Beaches.
Bread.
Bread.
Bushes.
Bushes.
And bulldozers.
Bulldozers.
They all start with B, don't they?
Just like my favourite.
Yeah, they are my favourites because they all start with the letter B. Hooray. This is a fun page. The letter B can make sounds too. Can you say bub, 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 bub?
Bub, 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 bub.
Can you say bob, 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 bob?
Bub, 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 bub.
Can you say brr?
Brr.
Oh dear, I think I'm going to...
Achoo!
A sneeze. I think I'm catching a cold. Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Now, where were we?
Oh, yes.
My favourite things. So the sneeze has blown away
The bee.
the bee. Oh my goodness. How can we read a book about things that start with B if we don't have a bee? Shall we see what happens? Here are a few more. I love my Ed.
Bed.
But it says Ed. Look, it says Ed.
Bed. It's supposed to say bed, they just took the bee away.
They took the B away. It's the est Ed in the whole world.
So I'll go ahead and stop there, but what a cute book and what a fun way. You can see she's having a good time there to work on deleting sounds and what it sounds like without letters. And there's lots of ways you can do this too with the cards and the beads and fingers, the finger spelling, taking a letter off and adding another letter. We use this a lot in Barton where it's the color tiles. So you'll have the color and they change one color tile for another color tile depending on the sound. So we use this a lot with Barton. It's very, very effective. Okay, so now we're getting into the why. Why do we need to know these things? My why is because of children, just like my grandchildren, that are going to go into a school system that need us to know the latest and the greatest on how to teach reading. And when kids struggle with reading, we want them to be able to figure out what to do. I mean, we want to be able to, as teachers, know what to do. And some of this seems, I know, because I did prepare this for kindergarten and first grade teachers, but it's also for ones that are struggling with their reading and what they need to do. So think about your why for a second to break things up. That was supposed to be my break time, but 11 o'clock came before we were finished. So that was we're going to go on now with a little substitution here. So this is being able to substitute one sound for another sound.
So my son got me this weird new tool for Father's Day. And at first I thought it looked kind of crazy.
What would you expect a child to be able to do by the end of this year? Can you describe that?
By the end of the year,
Sorry, stopped it.
I would like them to end up being able to take the beginning sound from a word, putting another sound there, taking an ending sound off of a word, and putting a different sound to make a new word.
So if we were to demonstrate that, I was thinking of the word sun. If we started with the word sun, it has a consonant in the beginning, a vowel in the middle, and another consonant on the end, and we would hope they would be able to change sun into bun by changing the first sound. And we would also hope that if we said, now change bun to bug, what sound you have to change, that they would know it was the last one, and that the sound on the end of bug was the g. And then maybe your more advanced students, would be able to do the hardest part of this. If we changed bug to bag, what would we have to change? Changing the vowel is harder, and it takes many children longer to do that.
So that was actually learning from the person that wrote the books on this, Louisa Moats, showing us a little ways to do that. Here's one more example.
And then put them back together. Kids, just hands in your laps. Let's do the next word. The word is sit.
Hang on just a second. For some reason, that didn't start at the beginning. Hang on.
Can you tell us how you found the new word?
Now, I like the way she's doing this. I want you to notice her visuals, how she's doing it with the visuals and the cards that she's taken off.
How you found the new word. So the word was silk. What did you do first? Our new word is sit. Excellent. So this is a new good. Take away this, and you add the one sound and replacing it with another sound is our new. Good. My friend Deshawn broke it down and then put them back together. Kids, just hands in your laps. Let's do the next word. The word is sit. The word is sit. The word is sit. Tell me the sounds in the word sit. Tell me the sounds in the word sit. Replace this at the beginning with an ooh. Ooh. What sounds do I have now? What's the new word? Lit. I lit the candle, so I had light. What's the new word? Lit. Awesome job. Give yourself a pat on the back. Next word. We have made the word lit. What is the word? Lit. Tell me the sounds in the word lit. Abel, tell me the sounds in the word lit. Lit. If I take away the ooh and replace it with a what's the new word? Turn and talk to your partner. It was lit. Pheeling, what's the new word? It was what's the word? Good job. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Jeremiah, we started with the word lit. What word? Lit. What word? Lit. What word? Lit. Tell me the sounds in the word lit. Richard. Lit. Take away the and put an What's the word now? Come back in 0. Dominic, what do you say, Suzanne? Track Dominic. Quick. What's on the back? In lit.
Okay, so examples there again. You see, does this seem a little? It's a little bit harder for us because we want to see the letters, don't we? We want to associate sounds with letters, but we're skipping a stage when we work with kids and we assume that they already can do that they can put the letters together as sounds. We're skipping a part that we need to be focusing on the ears and hearing and being able to hear sounds and move objects without the letters first. Does that make sense? It's like a prerequisite. Okay, everybody with me? Okay, so those were lots of those are all of my examples that I have on just different ways to do phonemic awareness. But I wanted to add something to the presentation for those of you that may be dealing with older students. So the rest of the time we're going to spend talking a little bit about the resources, and if we have time at the end, I have another presentation that I could share with you guys that is called Appy Hour, and it's just apps that you can use with older kids, the apps that focus on for struggling readers. So we'll talk about that too if we have time at the end. Questions before we move on, or does anyone have anything you saw that you thought you might try in your classroom? Anyone see a new idea you might try? Would the beads work maybe with the older kids? Maybe.
Another thing my students like, I know the poppers are really popular now. Those pops, I use those because my students don't like tapping. They don't like it, so we use the poppers, and they can pop out the sounds.
That's a great idea, and that's current events.
And they all have them. They all have them.
That's cool. Does anyone use apps like, does anyone have bubble wrap? Someone said bubble wrap would be fun. We're getting help here from the TLC too, from Ashley. Bubble wrap would work, popping those. Free. We're always looking for free teachers, free and inexpensive. Very good. Does anyone have, where you teach, do you guys have class sets of either Chromebooks or iPads? Which do y'all have? I'm curious.
We're one-to-one Chromebooks.
One-to-one
And
Chromebooks?
we have iPad carts that we can get.
Raise your hand if you use, I'm just doing a little poll here. I should turn on the polling thing. I should be all techie here, but this is just spur of the moment. How many of you iPad or Chromebook? iPad. Use iPads more in the classroom. Chromebooks. Okay. A lot of the ones I'm going to share with you are iPad apps, but they also have websites that are very doable on the Chromebook. So that's, they work both ways. So we will go back now to sharing, back to the presentation and talk about technology. Guys, this is before I really got into the phonemic awareness idea, I was doing most presentations at conferences on technology, because for me, the last 10 years, technology has evened the playing field for children with disabilities. You give a child with a disability an iPad and teach them how to use it, and you've done more to modify their instruction and their learning than anything you could ever do. I've seen them make incredible. They like it. They know how to use it. They can do spell-gram checks for their writing. There's just so many things that they can do with the iPads. Some of the things that we use with our online learning tools that I have used is this profile for phonological awareness. This used to be $19.95. It's from Smarty Ears. Y'all, this is amazing. Now I think it's like $39.95. It's gone up because it's so good. But I've actually used this. This is how you can assess phonological awareness, and it will give you, it's so easy to do as a teacher. It will give you activities for rhyming, blending, isolating, segmenting, deleting, and substitution. And then it will tell you how they do. It even gives you a report that you could share with their parents, and it gives a description of what areas that their strengths are. You can put all your students in this, and it just does so much of the work for you. And it will tell you exactly which area that they're struggling with. If you don't know, if you just know they're having trouble reading, that tells us nothing. That's not being diagnostic with our teaching. So we've got to break this down. Where are they having trouble with? In this particular case, we have a child that's really struggling with rhyming. Well, then that's what I'm going to focus my teaching on. So if you get any money for apps, I would really, this app is hard to find. It is. I've shared it at conferences before, and people bring their phones up. They're like, there is no such thing as this app, but there is. And so just keep looking for it. It is by Smarty Ears. It's a great app.
If you type in Pro PA, you should be able to find it.
Yeah, Pro PA.
It's the report that it generates. Yeah, I remember getting it from CA. I remember getting it, but the report it generates is so parent friendly and makes the word, and it gives suggestions on what parents can do as well.
Yeah, it does a lot of the work for us, and it helps us too. And it's not hard to give. It's easy to give too. Okay, then I love Chimp Thu. The students love Chimp Thu.
Colors can be sketched,
a lot of fun,
or even stretched.
Computer,
Whether
but
you
it's
prefer
also
hot
an app.
pinks
This is
or
one
cool
of the favorites
pinks,
when we did theirs
thousands
with
of colors.
kiddos. And it's syllable. Teaching the different syllable types. I've actually used this app as a reward many times for good behavior. To be able to play this game as a reward, because they love it so much. Anything by Nessie, Nessy. They have lots of great dyslexia games, but Chimp Thu is one of them. There's also some recommended apps. I gave you the link to that from the International Dyslexia Association. Some of these are free, some are not. But this gives you, kind of tells you what apps are the best to use with your students. And then it goes through and gives you beginning sounds interactive games, and it gives you links to each one of these. Letter Find is another one. Letter School, Starfall, Learn to Read. This is an Apple app. Most of these are Apple apps, but there are computers. Word Wizard is a fun one. Spelling City, because we know what's going to come next along with this is spelling, along with learning when we start putting letters with the sounds, we're going to be looking at spelling. So International Dyslexia Association is a great resource. Also, I thought this was a really interesting article from a Teachable Teacher, and it's 3 apps for teaching phonemic awareness that are free, and we're always looking for free apps. We've got a rhyming app here, Partners in Rhyme. We've got a syllable app teaching the syllable types and sound discriminations. So those are just 3 that are free. You can Google and find a lot of these. Like I said, the computer technology has really helped. I think during the pandemic, it's also helped a lot with our parents, helping kids and tutoring kids. And let's see, oops. Sorry about that, but I had one more free apps here. Go back to present mode. And here are some other apps that are free. There's usually children, this is Number Dyslexia, phonemic awareness apps. 10 must-have free apps for phonemic awareness. So again, when I put this together, for me as a teacher, I like to have resources that I can read myself. I don't really need someone to read to me or tell me. I can figure things out. We're all professionals. So I looked at this as a way so that when you left here, you could go, wow, that slideshow, I can go back and I can pull up lots of things. So I was trying to create a resource for you because you have enough to do without having to create and search and find all this on your own. So this is 10 free apps that I think you will enjoy. So technology, don't forget about technology. It's very, very important. Again, probably one of the best ways to differentiate instruction that I've seen in my career. And I love it. Fun and fantastic videos, going back with that phonemic awareness sounding there. A lot of my students, I had 8 kindergarten teachers in the fall that were my interns. There was 1 first grade teacher and the rest were kindergarten. This semester I had 8 and 5 of the 8 were kindergarten. So I've had a lot of experience in the last year with hands-on kindergarten teaching. And you would think that kindergarten teachers could not teach on Zoom, but let me assure you that they can. I've had teachers that are doing it face-to-face on Zoom, and they got those kids with those marker boards and magnetic letters and tiles, and they're still doing hands-on. They have to tell them to put their blanket down and wake up every now and then, but it can be done. So we've learned a lot, and one of the things we've learned is videos. You know, I know that you guys already knew to do the brain teaser videos. What am I trying to think of? What's the app that we go to do the yoga and the brain break? Noodle, Go Noodle. I read your lips, Abby. Go Noodle. We knew about Go Noodle before pandemic, but since then we've had to kind of learn more videos, not just for brain breaks, but for other things. Haggerty, I do realize that you have to purchase these, but these were probably the ones that I saw my teachers use the most and have the most effectiveness with on teaching sounds. Here's a little example.
As you begin to implement the phonemic awareness lessons in your classroom, I want to share a little bit of information with you about what this can look like in your literacy block. Let's start by defining what is phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is an understanding that spoken words are made up of individual sounds called phonemes. A child who is phonemically aware can isolate these sounds They can blend sounds together to make a word. They can segment a word into individual sounds as they develop as readers. They start to work with blending individual phonemes. You may use flashcards or an alphabet chart for this activity. We also incorporate an activity called language awareness. In our
Sorry about
letter
that.
naming and language
I think
awareness.
I uploaded the wrong one.
Explicitly teaching the Haggerty phonemic awareness lessons.
I wanted you to see the videos because they're so much fun, but just trust me, those are good videos. And they sing out, they do motions, teaching the sounds. And then I also found this from Mrs. Jump's class that I thought was a pretty cool activity. These are videos that she's actually posted as a kindergarten teacher, different ones. She's got them. Jack Hartman is probably the one that I've seen a lot too. It's a lot of fun. This is Party in the Jungle. Let me give you an example. Jack Hartman, the kids love him so much that they don't even really know that they're learning their sounds. They just think that they're having fun.
Children's songs, sing and move along. Children's songs to take your brain and body strong. There's a party in the jungle. Clap, clap, clap. There's a party in the jungle. Shake, shake, shake. There's a party in the jungle with dancing all around. There's a party in the jungle. Listen to the sounds. The monkeys swing, and you can hear them say, ee, 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 ooh, ooh, ee, 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 ooh, ooh, ee, 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 ooh, ooh. What do they say? Ee, 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 ooh, ooh, ee, 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 ooh, ooh, ee, 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 ooh, ooh. The monkeys swing, the elephants stomp, and you can hear them say, oh, oh, oh. What do they say? The elephants stomp, the hippos hip hop, and you can hear them say, hip, hip.
See, now I could have been mean and asked everybody to stand up and sing along and move along. Jack Hartman, probably number one, wouldn't you say, Abby? And those that have used these, wouldn't you say he's probably the number one videos for this? Really, really good. But anyway, she has some more. This is a kindergarten teacher that has, one of the things that I've been really impressed with in the pandemic is the sharing spirit of teachers. Like teachers have spent hours and hours creating things, libraries, games, activities, and they're just sharing it for free. And this is something that this teacher has done. She has kind of set up her classroom and her themes, and I was impressed with everything on her page. So this is something to know. Mrs. Jump's class for a good, and the other one that I really liked was called Sweet for Kindergarten. And I just liked their videos for phonemic awareness, that she has some warm-up activities that she does before every lesson for kindergarten and first grade. And she has them by weeks for kindergarten listed and first grade. And I thought that was pretty cool that, again, that she's sharing these daily warm-up activities. Oh, that one's not available. Well, there you go. It may not be free anymore. A lot of these took them down at the end of the school year. I hope they put them back up next year. So these are just some ones that I saw that I liked that were videos, because I think videos, we've taken a whole new look at this since the pandemic. Also putting it all together. Oops, I'm not done yet. I skipped something. There's one where I talk about, are you guys on Facebook? Where's my Facebook slide? This is going through this backwards and fast. I do have a slide on, okay, let's look at this. Bitmoji. I don't know where it happened to that slide, but did anyone do Bitmoji this past year? There's a, if you go to, I'll just share right now, Facebook. I couldn't believe the things that were created on Bitmoji for kindergarten. There's a Bitmoji for kindergarten, Bitmoji Craze for educators. If you're not a member of this, you guys have got to join this. It just kind of started out, it may be longer, but you have to be kind of invited, or you have to ask to be accepted, and then they'll add you. But this group, oh, they're going to archive it. Oh, doggone it. This is the one that I was talking about, that teachers have posted amazing things that they've done in their classroom. One of my favorites was a Dr. Seuss library. And it was like, you just click on the Dr. Seuss title and then it reads the book to the child. So for these kids that are home with their parents, all the parents had to do was put them on a certain page. And a lot of them do Google Docs that are interactive. So they're like learning centers. I saved a bunch of them and shared them with my intern, but it's just amazing. Like, here's lessons on comprehension, spelling, and they create these very complicated. I mean, there's like all these different clicks. You click here. Here's decodable readers. Decodable readers are really important for struggling readers, because the decodable readers only have the sounds that they've learned. Everything is phonetically spelled correctly versus others. But you can see all these different, this is the same person, all these different pages of her activities. Lesson 6 is on animals. Then she has decodable readers, grammar lessons, spelling lessons, vocabulary lessons. And unless it changes for this past year, Bitmoji Craze for educators. And there's also one for those of you that are kindergarten, for pre-K and kindergarten classrooms. That's the one that I used the most because it had the interactive games. It also has articles and different things too, but I really got a lot of great phonemic awareness lessons, shared them with my students. You can see lots of ideas and activities. Really cool stuff. And it's free.
There's also one called Science of Reading, What I Should Have Learned in College. And there's also a Science of Reading Arkansas that's amazing. They post
Facebook
really
page.
good stuff. Mm-hmm.
Good deal. Well, I just love the technology that's creative. I'm always going to be at heart. I started out an early childhood educator. That's what I'll always be. And I will always believe that kids need fun, creative, hands-on, interactive games, activities, because learning needs to be that, especially for young children. So that's enough of Facebook for you. We'll go back to our putting it all together, because I don't know what happened to my Facebook page. But anyway, so let's go back to this. So when we start thinking about putting these things together, I want to share a couple of more resources. Again, it's about resources today. Back to Reading Rockets. Here's kind of tells you the difference between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. And then it also gives you some videos to watch, and then also some games and strategies that you can use as teachers. Nursery rhymes, making it how to identify dyslexia in children that you may have in your classroom. So I thought this was a very good resource here. And then I love Louisa Moats and her work. This is a 9-page article that she wrote on how to teach what we've been talking about today, teaching decoding skills to children, just for your summer reading. Also, I I wanted to really put a plug in for this letters training. I think it's around $1,500. I pulled up mine because I'm actually in the process of going through letters training. It's all online training. You have tests that you have to take. I was just going to log in because it wouldn't show you mine. It gives you, there's different units that you go through on phonics, speech sounds. It's so much information. And then you take a test at the end of every unit. And then you also, at the end, you would be certified for a letters trainer in Arkansas, which would be a pretty cool thing. So it's very easy. It's just very time consuming because even someone with a lot of experience, the questions are kind of tricky. I hate those multiple choice questions where they give you two answers. You know, multiple choice is supposed to be one answer. So, but this is a great preparation. We know in Arkansas now, our K-6 teachers that are graduating have to take the Foundations of Reading exam. And that exam is actually changing next year. And it's going to be updated for a new exam starting in September that's going to have more vocabulary. That was one of the weaknesses they said of the core of the test, was that it didn't really have enough vocabulary and fluency, and it was heavy in the other three, or the other ones. So we'll see how that works. Just a little freebie information there for you. Wilson training, again, we have someone at UCA that has taught that in our early childhood classes, and that's a wonderful program. Again, I'm not promoting one program. I've been through connections training, and I thought it was awesome. I loved connection training. I also have seen Susan Hall at several workshops. My share button is not letting me share the 95% group. I don't know. Can you guys see the 95% group? My share thing is right in front of my 95% group. Let's see if I can pull it up here. There's Wilson. 95% group. This is Susan Hall, and I've actually seen her. I've seen her workshops several times. She has some cool materials that go along with her program. Her program, again, it's all Orton Gillingham based. By the way, I should have said this in the beginning. All of these programs that we've talked about today are based on the theory of Orton Gillingham and that hands-on theory that's been around for a long time. But I've seen Susan Hall. She does a lot of great things. She has something called the 95% group, which I believe is also a great option for you to have. And back to the online programs, another plug-in for the online programs. And then I'm going to stop the share for just a moment and show you some of my favorite resources. And then I will answer any questions that you have and let you guys share some of your favorite. We have brought David Kilpatrick to UCA several times. His essentials for assessing and identifying reading difficulties and overcoming them this is an amazing book. So if you are teaching, especially if you're a dyslexia interventionist or a specialist, you need to have his book on your bookshelf. Unlocking Literacy is another one that's a very good book. I know this is backward for you. This is by Marcia Henry, but she's also done, there's a lot of good practical things in there. Speech to Print is another good summer read as you're sitting out by the pool. This is Language Essentials for Teachers, and it's by Louisa Moats. Anything by Louisa Moats is going to be very good, and you're going to enjoy that. Overcoming Dyslexia is one of the first books that got me started with this line of research, and I've actually seen the author in person, and lots of good information there from that book. And then Essential Blocks by Dr. Bob Turner for Life and Leadership is also a good one to kind of put into your library. So, questions that you may have for me? I feel a little inadequate for those of you that are teaching older students today because, like I said, I did prepare this for kindergarten and first grade. So I apologize if some of these ideas were not helpful, but I think you can still use the resources and maybe modify and change some of the ideas and at least go a little deeper and figure out some of the ways. The Barton on the iPad, there's another Lexia. A lot of the schools are using, I think it's called Lexia, and the older students really seem to enjoy that app that helps them and walks them through some of the components of the reading process. Okay, everyone's going to have to share at least one thing that you learned before I let you get out of here today. So Heather, we're going to start with you.
I think a lot of the strategies for blending and segmenting were helpful.
Okay, good. Those of us that learn to read very easily, I think sometimes, I know this is true for me, we look at those things and go, everybody knows that. We think it's too simple or too easy, and it's not. And I think that's a hard lesson for those, especially those teachers that didn't struggle with reading, to know that we've got to break this down into very systematic, simple, and start with these tasks like you saw today. So thank you, Heather, for that. What about you, Cameron? Oh, I can't hear you. You're unmuted, but I still can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm probably yelling now. No, the Barton tiles for the Chromebook. Yes, ma'am. So we're paperless. So anything, yes, ma'am. So this would be great. And yeah, I'm in a self-contained room. See, so I've got, there's some variation there. So I have to use my judgment on where to start. That's why we use a program called Teach Town.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And it kind of reminded me of the Barton Tiles, and where you can select a level, kids on the lowest to the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would really considering I would say considering your situation, Barton would be one of the cheapest things that your school could purchase. And you can actually do training for parents too, so that you could, the parents could be trained. She gives videos, and all you do for training is just watch the videos and you're trained. So it's one of the easiest, most least expensive way to be trained. And I think in your situation, it would work really well with your self-contained students.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Abby?
I'm excited to incorporate some of those videos because I do Wilson, and that's because I'm dyslexia, I have to do it with fidelity. And so it's hard to incorporate other things. And I think those videos would be easy to incorporate in my lessons.
Did you see a lot of similarities with what you've learned in Wilson? Some of the,
Mm-hmm. And then I've done Barton before through UCA, and I love Barton. So
there's another one, and I'm blank on the title. Abby, you'll probably know it, but there's one I've seen done and actually used it with the lips. It's like, I don't know if it's in Foundations, that includes where it's pictures of the kids' lips that's actually showing them the different ways and shapes. I think it's called Lips, isn't it?
There's another one UCA uses, I forget what all we used. We had quite a few. We did the Logic of English, which was good for the younger kids. So
very good. What about you, Katie?
I think a lot of the videos, just thinking back to what I used in what I did with kindergarten, because I didn't know when I registered for this that I was going to be moved to 4th grade. So I think that a lot of the stuff that I used in kindergarten will help with some of these older kids, just because they're kind of the group that kind of missed and like the shift. All the training and everything. And so we're trying to get them caught back up. And so I think that a lot of these things will help. And I can tailor them to, their needs and things like that.
Yeah. And I think probably the 4th grade is about the age that the apps and the technology would really be helpful. I went ahead and put my email in the chat. Most of you probably know it. It's just tammyb@uca.edu. And I have another slideshow that's called Appy Hour, apps for helping. And I have some for older students because when we did Bears Read, we worked with 8th graders that couldn't read. I mean, we had older students. So we had a lot of different apps and especially for those like Cameron's got that are self-contained in the classroom. And a lot of times you can get their insurance and things to pay for some of this stuff so that they can have these helps at home. This is something they can take home with them. So, but Katie, I do believe, you know, you won't be able to use as much in 4th grade, but you can still think about the apps and you can look at your struggling readers a little differently. What about you, Cornelia?
Well, there were many things, and I tried to write a few notes. But when you mentioned the 5 components and how important it is that all of those come together and connect, that was eye-opening, so that we're not just focusing on one of those components or areas and trying to find a way to bring them all together. That was something that a great takeaway. And the resources that you shared were amazing. I've written several websites down. I enjoyed looking at the Reading Rockets website and the pals.com. I'll definitely be using some of those as resources and tools to help with the instruction.
Well, one of the things that, and I appreciate that, Cornelia, thank you very much. But one of the things that surprised me when I came to UCA, and I've always said this, and I've tried to teach my university classes this way. When I was a classroom teacher, I had the kids and I had the motivation, I had the love, I had the passion, but I didn't have a lot of time to get resources, you know? It was like I could barely get through the 8-hour day and then go home and take care of my family. I didn't have time to explore Reading Rockets. I mean, I just had to get through. And then when I went to the university, I had all these resources. I'm like, oh, I could have used this when I was a teacher. Why didn't I have this when I was a teacher? Why didn't I know about this when I was a teacher? So I've tried to always teach my classrooms that here are resources for you. And I open this up to you that all you have to do is shoot me an email and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I probably have a slideshow about it. I have a lot of slideshows about technology, differentiating instruction, reading, the science of reading. So if you want more information, shoot me an email. I will make sure that I get this presentation today shared with you. So Cornelia, you didn't have to write everything down. I will make sure that I share that with you. And I'll also share the Appy Hour one with you as soon as I get your emails from Ashley. But always think of me as a free resource. And if I don't know, you know, if I can't help you, I'll be honest. But if I can, that's something now. I'm at the stage of my career that I'm kind of getting close to the end. And my time is about impact. I'm not paid this summer. I have the summer off. I'm about to head out with my husband to the air base to go grocery shopping and have a good afternoon. But I did this morning because this is in my heart that I want to help kids and I want to help struggling learners. And the way I can do that is to be a resource to you. So please allow me to do that and ask me, email me, anything I can do to help you. I am more than happy to do that.